November 21, variant 3. The first question, enzymes are used in genetic engineering. Define the term enzyme. Remember, we have two definitions that are similar. Define the term enzyme. This is, what's the enzyme? It's a protein that functions as a biological catalyst. So what if he asked you what is the definition of a catalyst? That is like the chemistry. It is a substance that increases the rate of reaction without being changed. Okay? The process of genetic engineering often starts with steps shown. Step number 1, he gave you the DNA strand. This is the upper and the lower strand. Step number 2, he used an enzyme. What did this enzyme do? It cuts the DNA. State the sequence of the bases on the lower strand. He gave you the upper sequence and he wants the sequence on the lower strand. طيب, we know that always the A has a T in front of it and the G comes with a C. يبقى لو I will complete the sequence G, C, A, T, A, T, T, A, T, A, C, G. State the name of enzyme 1. What is the name of the enzyme that cuts the DNA? It is the restriction enzyme. Restriction enzyme cuts the DNA. Okay. Describe the effect of enzyme 1 on the DNA molecule. From the picture, he gave you that what happened using this enzyme, it divided the DNA into 2 pieces. طيب, so what will I say? The restriction enzyme cuts the DNA, leaving unpaired. شايفين مثلا this nitrogen base and this nitrogen bases, they are unpaired. They don't have another one in front of them. So what do we call this? We call them sticky ends. We call them sticky ends. يبقى it cuts the DNA molecule to form sticky ends, which are complementary with the plasmid. Remember that we will use the same restriction enzyme to cut the plasmid so that they are complementary together to be joined together. Okay. Explain how enzyme 1 is specific to the exact sequence of DNA bases. This means that why this enzyme specifically cuts here? Why doesn't it cut here or here? ليه specifically it cuts in this place? Any enzyme has a specific active site. For this enzyme, the substrate is the sequence of the nitrogen bases. So why does it cut specifically here? Because the sequence of nitrogen bases, which is the substrate, is complementary to the active site of the enzyme. Okay? The DNA base sequence, which is the substrate, is complementary to the active site of the enzyme. This is why when the enzyme meets a specific sequence, it cuts the DNA. Any questions? Another enzyme, enzyme 2, is used later in the process of genetic engineering. After a restriction enzyme, we use another enzyme. This is the plasmid DNA, and this is the DNA that we cut, okay? Enzyme 2 is used to join them together. The first question said, some organisms naturally contain the DNA in the form of a plasmid. What is the type of organism that has the plasmids? Of course, it is the bacteria. So what is the name of enzyme 2 that joins the DNA together? It is the ligase enzyme. After joining, when you have a modified plasmid, what do we call this? This is an important word. We call it recombinant plasmid. Recombinant. The important word here is recombinant plasmid. Okay. Sketch a graph to describe how the activity of the enzymes used in genetic engineering would change if the reaction occurred at a range of temperatures from very cold to very hot. Label the axis with the appropriate titles. So again, in this question, he wants to find the effect of temperature on the enzyme activity. The factor you change, which is the temperature, you put on the x-axis. The factor you measure, the results you measure, you put the label on the y-axis, enzyme activity, and then you draw. When you draw, take care that the slope here is slower, while the slope here is steep. Why is this? Because after the optimum temperature, enzymes denature and they immediately decrease. The activity immediately decreases till it stops. Okay. Question 2. Photomicrograph of the end of a plant root. Figure 2.2 shows the results of a study on the rate of uptake of nitrate ions at different points along the root. These are the distances from the root tip. He wants to see each area, how much nitrate ions does it uptake. So these are the results. This is the distance. At first, 0 uptake, and then it increased a little bit, okay? Then it increased. This is the highest uptake, and then it started to decrease again. Of course, he would ask you, describe the rate of uptake. We agreed in any description, you can use some general points, زي إيه? Describe the trend. What is the general trend? Is it increasing and decreasing? It's fluctuating, it's constant. What is it? Number 2, if you have a maximum point or a minimum point, where is it? Number 3, the slopes. يعني, where is the steepest, the highest rate of increase? Where was it? Number 4, use data. Use numbers from the graph in front of you as a comparison. You don't just state one number, you state 2 points and compare between them. We will see now. So what did I say here? I said that the nitrate uptake increases and then decreases. It increased and then it decreased. Maximum uptake is at 27 millimeters. I can tell him, هنا, where was the maximum uptake? You will go down, you will find that it was 27 millimeters. I can also tell him how much was the maximum uptake. By using a ruler, you move to this axis and read how much was the uptake. No nitrate uptake before 2.75. As we said, in this part, the graph was at the 0. There was no nitrate uptake at all. So this is a point to say. Nitrate uptake is constant from 10 to 15. From 10 to 15, nitrate uptake was constant. All of this are descriptions to the graph. The last thing, use the data. How am I going to use the data? 1 second. Okay. How am I going to use the data? You should use numbers. إزاي? مثلا, when the distance was 15 millimeters, the rate of uptake was 10 p-mol per centimeter square per second. You have to tell him the whole unit. Don't just write numbers. You have to say the units. While when the distance was 20, you will go up 20 millimeters. You will go up and read what was the nitrate uptake. I think it is 21 p-mol per centimeter square per second. That's it? لا. You should do a mathematical equation. Yani, for example, you will tell him that the nitrate uptake increased by 11 p-mol per centimeter square. Okay, this is how you use the number. Explain how the nitrates moves from the soil into the roots. This is a normal question. Nitrates moves into the roots. Nitrate is a mineral. Okay, how does the root absorb any mineral? Active transport. Type, we have 4 marks. 1 mark for active transport, and you have to tell him more details. Active transport means that the molecules move against concentration gradient, which means from low to high. This or this is the same mark. Using energy across the cell membranes through protein carriers. البروتينز اللي موجودة in the cell membranes. Okay? Protein carriers or protein channels, both are right. Explain why the uptake. This is a new question. Explain why the uptake of ions, such as nitrates, is important for the uptake of water. What is the relationship between the ions and the water? Let's think. This is the root hair cell, okay? The root hair cell first uptakes the nitrates by active transport. But what happens when there is a lot of minerals inside the root hair cell? What happens to the water potential? There will be low water potential. But how is this beneficial to the plant? When you have low water potential inside, high water potential outside, this allows the water to move in by osmosis. Okay, so why is the uptake of ions important? It lowers the potential gradient in the roots to allow the entry of water by osmosis. Explain why the plant needs nitrate ions other than for the uptake of water.
ثانية بس، هو حضرتك كنت كاتبة في الإجابة lowers the potential gradient in the root. So food the lowers the water potential in the root.
Lowers the water potential. Sorry, it is lower the water potential. Okay, lowers the water potential. Okay. Explain why the plant nitrate ions needs nitrate ions rather than for the uptake of water. محتاجة nitrates. Where else do I need nitrates? I need it to make the amino acids, since in the amino acids is formed of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. So I get the nitrogen from the nitrates to make proteins, for growth, to make enzymes. All these are correct. I need 3. Describe how the nitrate ions are formed in the soil. This is similar to the question in variant 2. He wants you to describe the nitrogen cycle. How are the nitrates ion formed in the soil? Where do we get the nitrates? How is it cycled in the nitrogen cycle? Number 1, proteins in the dead bodies or the feces or in any organic waste are decomposed into amino acids. And then the amino acids are converted to ammonium. Ammonium is then converted to nitrites, then nitrates by the nitrifying bacteria in the nitrification process. Also, I can tell him the other route, which is nitrogen fixing bacteria converts the nitrogen gas in the air to ammonium, and then the ammonium is converted to nitrates in nitrification. So
ممكن اقول له deamination برضو.
Deamination is this process. Amino acids converts to ammonium. This is deamination. Figure 2.3 shows some of the events that occurs when high concentration of nitrate ions flow into the lakes. Nitrates كتيرة, a lot of nitrates goes to the lake. This means excess fertilizers going to the lake, so this is eutrophication. What will happen? When the nitrates goes to the lake, the plants in the lake feeds on the nitrates. So there will be an increase in the population of producers. Okay? طيب, what will happen next? The producers accumulates on the surface. Okay? When they accumulate on the surface, they decrease the light intensity at the bottom of the lake. So this is number 2. When the light intensity decreases, يحصل إيه? The plants start to die. Decrease in the population of producers. When the plants die, what else happens? The decomposers will increase. The bacteria increases because they feed on the dead plants. When the decomposers increase, they respire, they finish all the oxygen, so the fish starts to die, decrease in the population of consumers. So it will be FDCEAB. Type. What is the name of the process summarized? What is this a description of? It is the eutrophication. Question 3. The researcher investigated genetic variation in the fruit flies. The bodies of the fruit flies can be black or yellow. A yellow body color is a recessive feature. هو قال لي بقى, he told me which is the dominant, which is the recessive. Since the yellow recessive, so the black is dominant. 2 heterozygous fruit flies with black bodies were bred together. Heterozygous. If you breed 2 heterozygous, what is the ratio of the offspring? You can try it. If you cannot remember, you can try it with any letter. مثلا B capital, B small, B capital, B small, and you can try it كده. It will be capital, capital, capital small, capital small, small, small. So the ratio is 3 dominant to 1 recessive. يبقى ratio will be a 3 black, 1 yellow. Careful, he told you, predict the phenotypes and the ratio. So you have to tell him which is which, 3 black to 1 yellow. In another fruit fly, a breeding experiment, researchers counted 124 offspring with black bodies, 121 with yellow bodies. What ratio is this? This ratio is 1 to 1. As I told you before, the numbers does not have to be exact. Yani they don't have to be 124 to 124. It is close to it. So this ratio will be 1 to 1. Draw a genetic diagram to explain the results of this cross. Use the letter B capital for the body, black color, B small for the yellow color. What is the genotypes that give me 1 to 1? Okay, first of all, what will be the phenotypes? Black and yellow. This is the phenotype, the color. Type. What is the ratio that gives me 1 to 1? The genotype that gives me 1 to 1, sorry. The black will be heterozygous and the yellow will be homozygous. But how did I know? How did I know? What are the options? The first option you just tried. If the 2 are heterozygous, okay, the offspring will be 3 to 1. Type. Bear in mind, you must have a recessive allele here and the recessive allele here so that some of the offspring are recessive. So the only option that will give me this is 1 heterozygous and 1 homozygous recessive. And then you will divide the gametes. You will do the crossing. 1, 3, 1, 4, 2, 3, 2, 4. B capital, B small, B capital, B small. This is the black. B small, B small, B small, B small. This is the yellow. So you will write the offspring. And this is the ratio here. C. The crab, Kerberusa, مش عارفة ايه, Sika, lives in dark caves and has no colored pigment. It lives in the dark. It has no colored pigment. This is the photograph. The C. Sika and the D. melanogaster are both arthropods. Okay. State one feature present in all arthropods that are not invertebrates. What are the features of all arthropods? We had 3 features of all. The features that are in all arthropods are the segmented body, jointed legs, and exoskeleton. But take care, he wants one that is not invertebrates. So only segmented body or exoskeleton will apply. Jointed legs does not apply because vertebrates also have jointed legs. Okay, the C. Sika is a crustacean and the D. melanogaster is an insect. What is a morphological feature that distinguishes the crustacean and not as an insect? What is special about the crustacean, not in the insect? The best feature that distinguishes between all the arthropods are the number of legs. Insects have 3 pairs of legs, crustaceans have 5 pairs of legs, the arachnids have 4 pairs of legs. What makes this a crustacean is that it has 5 pairs of legs. Okay? The ancestors of the sea cica had pigmented bodies. That's a repeated question. When he tells you that the ancestors had a feature, however, in the recent generation, this feature is not there anymore. Or the opposite, this feature was not present in the past, but in the recent generations, the feature started to appear. The lack of the colored pigment in the sea cica is called albinism and was caused by a mutation many thousands of years ago. Explain the mechanism that has resulted in the allele for albinism becoming common in the recent generation. How did this feature become more common in the recent generation? Number 1, natural selection occurred. Why? How did it happen, Yani? The albino crabs with no pigment must have been better adapted to the environment, so they will survive more, they will reproduce, and they will pass the mutant allele to their offspring. This is why most of the recent generation became albino, no pigment. State 2 factors that causes mutation. ممكن radiation, chemicals, these are the things that causes mutation. Okay. Question 4. HIV is a pathogen that causes AIDS. Describe how HIV is transmitted. Number 1, the most important thing that the HIV virus is transmitted through the mixing of body fluids. Type. The mixing of body fluids can happen in multiple cases. During sexual intercourse, or using contaminated needles, the blood will be mixed, which is a body fluid, or in contaminated blood transfusion, still the blood will be mixed, which is a contaminated body fluid. You can also say through breastfeeding. You can say through placenta, okay? يعني from mother to baby. All viruses contains the genetic material. HIV contains the genetic material called RNA. The virus consists of 2 parts only. What is the other feature common to all the virus? The protein coat. This is the virus. It has a genetic material and a protein coat around it. Only 2 parts. Type. What is the function of the lymphocytes? What do the lymphocytes do? They produce antibodies which destroy the pathogens. How do they destroy the pathogens? They are complementary to the antigens of the pathogens. Also, they are responsible for the active immunity. They produce memory cells, which provides long-term immunity. This is the function of the lymphocytes. But what about the phagocytes? The phagocytes, they do the phagocytosis. But if he asks you about the function of the phagocytes, don't just say phagocytosis, explain it. The phagocytes move towards the bacteria. Yes, engulfs the bacteria, digests it using enzymes. State how the infection with HIV affects the lymphocytes. We know that the HIV virus targets the T helper lymphocytes. It destroys the lymphocytes. This is the answer. Okay. The doctors wanted to determine whether the dietary supplements would help people infected with HIV. If they changed their diet, would they feel any better? They randomly put volunteers with HIV into 2 groups. Treatment group, they received the medication and additional vitamin and mineral. Control group, they received medication only. The details of the groups are outlined. This is the treatment group. This is the control group. Okay. Okay, this is the years and this is the mass. The dietary supplements that were given, vitamin C, vitamin D, calcium, iron, and other minerals. Why is vitamin C important and why is iron important? طبعا vitamin C is important as it keeps the blood vessels healthy, it helps tissue repair, it prevents scurvy and gum bleeding. All of this is correct. Okay, vitamin C عامة is important for the skin and the blood vessels. It formation of the skin, okay, and blood vessels. طب what about iron? Production of hemoglobin, to transport oxygen, and to prevent anemia. Prevent anemia. طيب. And then he gave you the results. But this is the treatment group. This is the control group. The average number of lymphocytes at the start and after 3 months. The average number of HIV copies at the start and after 3 months. هنا average number وهنا number بتاع lymphocytes. طيب, what happened? Sorry, the HIV virus. Use the data for the treatment group to calculate the percentage decrease in the average number of copies of the HIV RNA. Percentage decrease in the treatment group هنا. Percentage decrease is the same as percentage change is the same as percentage increase. نفس الطريقة, it's the same way. How do I calculate it? You get the change, the difference between the number over the original number times 100. So how will I do it? 4291 minus 897 over 4291 times 100. How do I know that this is the original number? ما هو, he told me I want the percentage decrease. So it was this number and then it decreased to this number. This is the original. Okay? It will be 79%. Any questions? Evaluate the effect of the dietary supplements on the lymphocytes. Evaluate means, what do you think from these numbers? What happened? Use the information in your answer. طيب. In the treatment group, the number of lymphocytes increased while the number of HIV copies decreased. لا, he wants the effect on the lymphocytes, so I don't need this. So هنا the number of lymphocytes increased in the treatment group, while in the control group, it did not change. He wants 2 marks. So if you just told him these 2 points, you will get the 2 marks. But for your info, can I say that the treatment is 100% effective from this experiment? The vitamins, يعني? Do you think you could say that using vitamins is 100% effective?
No.
Sorry?
لان ال HIV لسه موجودين.
Okay, so I cannot say the number is the treatment is 100% effective. Not because the HIV is still there, but because starting lymphocytes أصلاً they were not the same. So you can't compare. This is number 1. Number 2, how many people did you use in this experiment? I used 18 and 22 only. Is this an enough sample to use for an experiment?
No.
No. يبقى if I want to say a conclusion, I will say I cannot reach a conclusion here because the sample size is small and the starting number of lymphocytes is not the same. Question 5, it shows some people fishing on a large scale and some people fishing on a small scale. All types of fishing have negative impacts on the fish stocks. Discuss how he does not want the negative impact. He does not want the negative impact of livestock. Intensive farming لا he wants ايه بقى? Discuss how the governments can regulate the fishing to maintain the fish stocks. This is pure studying. But take care, he told you, use the word sustainable. He wants you to describe what is a sustainable resource. So the first point, I told him that the sustainable resource is one which is produced as rapidly as it is removed so that it does not run out, such as the fish. How can I make it sustainable? What does the government do to make sure that the fish does not run out? Monitor fish stocks, educate the people, put quotas for the fishing, restriction on the times when fishing can occur. Yani in the seasons where the fishing is reproducing, the farmers should not fish. Putting fines if the people does not follow the law, they put a fines. Okay. Figure 5.2 shows the location of a chemical factory. This is a chemical factory and it's releasing a waste product. This is site number 1 and this is site number 2 and this is the direction of the flow. The figure shows the sex ratio of fish in the river at site 1 and site 2. Intersex fish have both female and male organs. Intersex دول, they have both organs in the same fish. طيب. Site number 1, this is the females, this is the males. Site number 2, females, intersex, and this is only the males. State and explain what type of chemical the factory would be releasing. What type of chemical would be released to make this change in the sex of the fish?
بس هو الانترسكس ده بيتحول لفيميل بعدها صح؟
Yes, might change to females, yes. But he told me that the intersex here in this question, it has both organs in the same fish. What is the type of chemical released? It must have been a sex hormone or estrogen hormone. Why did I say this? Because I can see that I have a lower percentage of male fish. A greater percentage of the intersex fish also can be written. State how the sex is inherited. 1 second. How the sex is inherited in humans through the X and the Y chromosomes, which is pair number 23. If you inherit 2 X chromosomes, the baby will be a female. If the baby inherits 1 X, 1 Y, it will be a male. The last question. The heart pumps blood around the body. That was an easy question. Why the heart is an organ? You will just say the definition of the organ. It's a group of different tissues working together to perform a specific function. And then he wants you to complete. Easy. The circulatory system includes the heart and the blood vessels. This is the system which includes the heart and the blood vessels. The deoxygenated blood from the body is transported to the heart. All the deoxygenated comes back to the heart from the right side through the vena cava. During the heartbeat, the ventricles contract. The right ventricle pumps the deoxygenated to the lungs. It has a what muscular wall? It has a thinner muscular wall than the left ventricle. Because we know in the left ventricle pumps to all the body a further distance, that's why it needs a thicker muscle. Gas exchange in the lungs occurs by diffusion. Oxygenated blood travels back to the heart بقى from the pulmonary vein where it enters the left atrium. The two sides are separated by the septum, which is the wall between the left and the right sides. This structure prevents the mixing of the oxygenated and the deoxygenated. Oxygenated blood is delivered to the rest of the body. Blood is supplied to the muscle of the heart. What is the blood vessel that supplies the heart muscle itself? It is the coronary artery.
لا النهارده مفيش حصه الحمد لله. لا خلاص احلمي.
Okay. The last question. Many people monitor the heart rate by counting their pulse. State one other method of monitoring the heart rate. Other than counting the pulse, we have two other methods. Either ECG, the electrocardiogram, or listening to the sounds of the valves opening and closing, which is the sounds of the heart. It sounds that you hear is the valves opening and closing. This is correct or this is correct?
وعادي نكتب
That's
ECG
it.
مش electrocardiogram.
Yes, ECG is a common abbreviation. You
Okay.
can write
Hello.
ECG or electrocardiogram.
Listen to